Welcome back and thanks for staying with the SABC. So voting is underway in India in what's being described as the world's largest election. 1 billion eligible voters will, over the course of the next 2 months, elect members of India's lower house of parliament. The elected parliamentarians will then in turn elect the country's next prime minister. Incumbent Narendra Modi is expected to win though, but the leader is battling allegations of cracking down on the opposition to skew the results, a charge he denies. Let's get you a sense of how things are unfolding. Bring in our correspondent in Delhi. That's Neha, who joins us now. It's lovely to see you, Neha. And, you know, there's great anticipation to see how things will go, despite predictions that Narendra Modi is likely to make a comeback. What's your reading of how things have fared so far?
Well, like you said, this is the world's biggest election and the scale is simply staggering. We're talking about 1 billion eligible voters. That's nearly 17 times the population of South Africa, just for context. And now this is only the first phase of 7 phases that will be held over the course of the next 2 months. We're talking about a 40-day exercise, and on the first phase we have seen voter turnout touching about 24% in the first half of the day. Polls are expected to close by about 12 G local time, and experts are hoping that more voters will come out to cast their ballot. But this is the start of peak summer in India, which has worried some experts. But Prime Minister Modi, who you said is widely expected to win, has also tweeted urging voters to come out, saying every vote and every voice will count in this mammoth electoral exercise.
Yeah, and speak to us about the logistics that are involved here. I mean, it's certainly a foreign concept for those who are watching from South Africa, this concept of running an election not only over days, but over months, which is the case in India.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a mammoth population. Now India's home to the world's largest population. And the Election Commission recognizes the staggering task at hand, which is why it's deployed about 15 million polling staff and security personnel. For years, India's conducted its elections in a phased manner, given the length and breadth of the country. And the Election Commission operates in such a way that it ensures that even in the remotest parts of the country, even if one constituency has one eligible voter, a voting machine reaches that area so that residents there can cast their ballot and exercise their democratic exercise. Over the last few weeks, we've seen election officials take helicopters, trains, boats, sometimes even bullock carts to get these voting machines to polling constituencies. The reason why it's phased is so that security personnel can be moved from one part of the country to another to ensure security is maintained during this 2-month-long polling exercise. Now, it's also going to be one of the most expensive elections in the history of the world. Some estimates suggest that parties could spend as much as $14 billion to woo voters over the next 40 days.
Wow. Let's speak about the big issues that are likely to dominate this election. The jobs crisis is a big one, the rising cost of living. And as I mentioned before speaking to you, this perception at the very least that there's a crackdown on opposition participants.
Absolutely. I mean, the opposition has described this election as a make or break one, saying that, who the country decides to elect will decide whether or not the country remains a secular, democratic country. And they're saying this because they're accusing Prime Minister Modi, who is widely expected to win according to several surveys. They're accusing him of cracking down on rival parties, on made-up corruption charges. But the Prime Minister has denied that. He's called all of these allegations lies. He says that federal agencies are simply cracking down on the corrupt, and he's simply fulfilling a promise made to voters a decade ago when he was first, sworn in, that he would make India a corruption-free country. But for average Indians, the cost of living crisis is something that they're hoping whichever party wins will address. India also has a huge unemployment problem. It's home to one of the youngest populations in the world. So they're hoping that whichever party wins will address address that issue as well. But at a time of rising global tensions, many Indians also think the country needs a strong government, a government with a complete majority and mandate, so that India can help navigate the region at least through this moment of geopolitical crisis.
Yeah, India, of course, has instances of dilapidated infrastructure throughout the country, but there is a perception that economically speaking, the country is in a better place than it was, let's say, 10 years ago. And I suppose Narendra Modi is going to be riding that kind of outcome throughout this election.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that he's telling voters repeatedly when he's going on election rallies and on the campaign trail is that it's his government that has made India an economic powerhouse at a time when countries around the world, especially in the region, are dealing with deflation, with an economic slowdown. India has been the one bright spot, so as to speak. And he claims it's because of his government's policies that that's happened. And, one of his pitches is that if he's voted back to power, his government will do everything it can to make India a developed country by 2047. He says that's the vision he's aiming for. He's not just looking at what he can accomplish in the next 5 years, but what India can achieve in the next decade or so. But the opposition, of course, has questioned the authenticity of these numbers, and they say that, the government doesn't talk about issues like unemployment, issues like rising inflation, and while India is doing well economically, that's not trickled down to the common man on the ground.
Yeah, one certainly gets a sense that this is a marathon, so it's a situation that you want to take as steady as you can. Neha, Poonia, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Neha is our correspondent live to us there from Delhi in India, the country voting over a number of months given the sheer scale of this particular election. 1 billion people, we're told, eligible to cast their ballots.